to wake up in the morning to the quiet of the cove and hear Aunt Bessie talking to herself, and to hear poor Uncle John mumbling wishes to old Nell. It made me feel like everything was fine. I was born down by the water, it's here I'm gonna stay. I've searched for all the reasons why I should go away, but I haven't got the thirst for all those modern day toys, so I'll just take my chances with those saltwater joys. Following a little brook as it trickles to the shore in the autumn when the trees are flaming red, kicking leaves that fall around me, watching sunset paint the hills. It's all I'll ever need to feel at home. This island that we cling to has been handed down with pride by folks who fought to live here, taking hardships all in stride. So I'll compliment her beauty, hold on to my goodbyes, and I'll stay and take my chances with those saltwater joys. How can I leave those mornings with the sunrise on the cove and the gulls like flies surrounding Clayton's wharf? Platter's Island wrapped in rainbow in the evening after fog. The ocean smells our perfume to my soul. Some go to where the buildings reach to meet the clouds, where warm and gentle people turn to swarming faceless crowds. So I'll do without their riches, glamour and the noise, and I'll stay and take my chances with those saltwater joys. Some go to where the buildings reach to meet the clouds, where warm and gentle people turn to swarming faceless crowds. So I'll do without their riches, glamour and the noise, and I'll stay and take my chances with those saltwater joys.
Good evening, and welcome to This Week in Review. Tonight for our story, we have George Reed and Dave McDowell in our studio explaining the purpose of BBS and how things are being handled with the wireless internet. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to the studio.
Good evening.
George, would you mind telling us, the listening public, on the makeup of the BBS, please?
Okay. The reason that I wanted to come to this interview, because I think there are some people in the public in Birchville don't really fully understand how this company is run, I suppose, and who owns it, and where does the money go, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is just give a history of the Birchville Broadcasting System, and hopefully that'll clear up any questions that anyone's got. And if it doesn't clear it up to their satisfaction, or if they don't get the facts clear, or if I don't say them clear enough, then of course they can always phone me. But this company was started back in 1981. It was started off by Lloyd Walters, who had the information concerning the satellites that were going up in the sky, of course, to give TV signals to remote areas, and that's where it got its start. And what happened was that Lloyd got together 10 people, well 9 besides himself, and and they were to be the directors of the company. It was incorporated in 1981, and it's a non-profit company. Now, we use the word share, and when I say share, that the people who contributed money to this company, they end up getting what they call a share. But it's not a share like you would buy a share in General Motors or buy a share in any company that was going to pay you a dividend, or that you would sell your share and get your money back. These shares that were issued for this company, or that was when this company was formed, is called a non-capital shares. In other words, they got no monetary value. Absolutely no monetary value. And I'll just read to you what it says here. It says the cooperation is to be carried on without any monetary gains to its members. So in other words, all the money that's made by this company stays in the company and gets spent on behalf of the company. In other words, the equipment, updating the equipment, and so on and so forth. It also says that if this corporation was to be dissolved, then after all the payments of all its debts and its liabilities, then all the remaining property shall be distributed to organizations in the province whose undertakings would be charitable or beneficial to this community. So when we started in 1981 in June, we asked everyone who wanted to get TV from this BBS to give $100. Basically, it was a donation to get better television. And if people can remember back in the early 80s, there was no TV pretty much. You know, the signal from Ramya, from the CBC was off and on. CTV, there was, I think some people might have got something, but basically the television was very, very poor. So in 1981 then, they were asked to give $100, so a lot of people donated $100. And then in November, we found out that wasn't enough money. In November, we bought more dishes. They were asked to give another $50, or new people were asked to give $150. And in 1983, when we expanded again, for any new people coming on stream who wanted to participate in order to get the signal that BBS was offering, they were charged $250. And then in 1994, we changed the way that people could access the TV signals from BBS. And what we did then was that instead of having the $250 that they would have to donate to the company, basically that's what it was, because what was happening was a lot of people were coming in, staying for, say, 4 weeks, staying for 2 or 3 months, and then they were leaving. And we were charging them $250 to get hooked up for 4 months. But they wouldn't pay it all out at one time, and then when they leave, they wouldn't pay it. So then we were left with a number of people with a bill owing, and of course you would just never get your money back. So what the directors did then was that they changed it so that they were sure they were going to get the money because they were going to charge a hookup fee of $50. So every time now anybody wants to get hooked up, any new person wants to get hooked up, they charge them a $50 hookup fee. Now, so what do you get, with your money that you've invested in BBS? Well, I guess you get the right to hook up to the television, and you get the right to as cheap prices that we can give you for television, but you don't get any monetary gains if you leave it. I mean, once you says I don't want the cable anymore, and you leave and go somewhere else, well, that's it. You just leave. And the money that you paid, if you paid the 100 or the 150 or the 200, well, then that's just part of setting up the company, this non-profit company. Now, who runs this company? Well, this company is run by a minimum of 3 directors and a maximum of 10. And every two years, there's a public meeting. It happens sometime in June, and new directors are elected. For the past, I'd say 10, 15 years, nobody's been interested except basically the people that's been there. Most years we end up getting 8, 9, 7. This year I think we ended up with 7 people turned up to the meeting. Of course they were all elected, and 3 more were elected that weren't there but who showed some interest and said that they would serve if they were nominated. So this company still belongs to the town. It is a company of the community. All the profits that are made, and over the years there haven't been very much profit, let me tell you. I mean, I've been here since 1981. I was with Lloyd Walters when we started this, and there hasn't been very much profit made. We have tried to keep the prices for television, your signal, down as low as possible, and any profit we've made have been going back into the company. I don't know if you've been anywhere else, but with the number of signals that you're getting here now, in most communities, you'll probably be looking at $35, $40 for that type of service. And I'll just run down through just to show you that we haven't been making that much profit, and I'll give you the last 4 or 5 years. In 2000, we made $2,096. That was the net profit. 2001, we made $283. 2002, we made $4,984. In 2003, we lost $12,922. The reason for the loss there, that was when we started the upgrading of the system, and it was 2001 we started to upgrade, and by 2003 we had to put money into it to finish the upgrading. 2000, of course, then the internet came on stream, and when we put the internet on stream, then the internet part of the business is making money, and the money that we're making from the internet up to this point, I would say 90% of it has been put back into the system, trying to get the internet working. We didn't have the money to upgrade our TV system. I think it was in 2001. We ended up getting a grant from the federal government to help us to upgrade our system, and the system itself cost, the cable system cost $225,000 to upgrade. We didn't have BBS did not have the money to do that. The grant from the federal government was used to do that, and I think that grant turned out to be over $400,000. The rest of it was used to try to put in internet in the 5 communities. Of course, Granbridge, Burgess, Ramsey, Grey River, and Francois. BBS, that wasn't part of what we were set out to do. That wasn't our mandate. But the federal government basically said, look, we're giving you this money. We want you to try to put internet into these communities. So for getting $225,000 to do our own system here in Burgess, we had to say yes that we were going to put in internet. And I think probably if I had it back again, I certainly wouldn't use the word of calling that we were going. The dial-up was pretty slow that they had here, and I certainly wouldn't use the word that we're going to put in high-speed internet, because it's been anything but that, I suppose. There's times it's been fairly fast, but we're having problems with it, and Dave will talk on behalf of that. But on behalf of BBS, I have to say that we've spent just about every cent that we've made since we started this wireless internet to try to get it working satisfactory. I'm sure a lot of people would say, well, it's a pretty easy thing to do. Just go ahead and do this and do that. Well, we've done this and we've done that. We've done just about everything that people have told us to do. And I don't mean anybody on the street that told us to do, but I mean what people with knowledge have told us to do. And if that internet was so easy to be given on this coast, somebody would have been here and done it before. There is no question about it. When we started this off back in, I think 2001, we were going to go with satellite internet, satellite hookup. That turned out to be just too expensive. You'd never been able to serve the town with it. In other words, we didn't know, the group that was organizing this, and no one else knew, how to provide internet into Burgeo and all these other communities at a higher speed than just than dial-up. When Dave came on stream that he started the wireless thing, and it's proven to be, I guess, the future in a lot of electronics, that signals are given out wireless. So I think we looked into the right means of doing it, but just not that simple. I mean, we're carrying signals from Burgeo to Grand Brit to Rolls Blanche before we get into the fiber optic there, and we're carrying it to Ramio, to Grey River, to Francois, and equipment is, we're maxing out the equipment that we can afford to buy. Now, I got no doubt Dave will probably tell you that there's equipment out there that we can buy that probably would do the job and do it efficiently, but this company can't afford that kind of equipment. It just can't. So I just want to, try to, I suppose, tell the people that this is a company of the community. And the board of directors, they're all volunteers. Nobody gets any money here except the 3 people that we have hired. The 10 directors, this year we have 10 directors. We've operated on 6 and 7, and we're fortunate enough this year to get 10. These people, it's volunteer time. Everything is just volunteer. Now, that doesn't mean to say we're not working hard to try to solve the problems. We're not sitting back here not trying to solve these problems that we have with the internet. We're trying to do the best we can up to this point in my knowledge that we are, and Dave will fill you in on that. But I want to make sure this is plain, that this company does not belong to the directors. It belongs to the community of Burgeo.
Okay.
If you want anything clarified, you want anything?
No, I think basically that says most of it, what people have been wondering.
Okay.
So I'm going to pass it over to Dave now, and explain the internet problems in the best manner that you can.
Good luck. Well, one of the things that I want to go back, and a lot of people have asked why we don't have our internet on the cable system. And that George alluded to the fact that back in the past, we were given government money and we were asked to put the internet in the 5 communities. And one of the stipulations on putting it in those 5 communities that I had to put, or BBS ICT project, had to put the same system in all the communities. So we were stuck in a situation where in Burgeo, the BBS just put a brand new cable system in there, and the logical choice is to put our internet into the cable system. And yes, that would work. It would mean making some changes to the cable and putting all kinds of stuff in there. But we didn't own the cable system in Ramia, and we still don't own the cable system in Ramia or Grey River or Grand Brit or Francois. So one of the stipulations was what you did for one community, you had to do for them all. And there's no way we could stretch the $400,000 to put that same system in all the communities. Burgeo alone cost over $200,000, and we already had an existing cable system here. So we had to use a technology or an idea that was unique or the same in all 5 towns. So one of the first things that we did was we went up the road and had a chat with Alliant and said, we have this pile of money and we need this done. Is there anything that we can do, make a donation or buy you guys to get you guys to come down here and put high-speed internet in all 5 of our towns? And they flat out said that is nowhere near enough money to do it for all 5 towns, and that they were not interested. So we were left on our own to take this money and put an internet system in there. But the first top priority that they had was to put a video conferencing unit in all the schools and healthcare clinics in all the towns. So that's where the bulk of the money went into. So we put out in a wireless network that, and George is right, that 50 kilometers was, at that time, was the extreme end and the longest distances that you could do with wireless stuff. And we played with it and struggled and got it working. So we got the video conferencing systems put in all the communities. After all the video conferencing systems were put in the communities, that in order to make the system self-sustainable, or when the government money ran out, that we put internet on there in order to keep the system running. So that's where the internet side of it came out of it. But we had to go wirelessly because we didn't own the cable systems in the other communities. And it was a stipulation of the government money. So wireless was cutting edge and proven to be working. So we started putting out wireless internet in Burgeo. And once we figured out how it was working in Burgeo, we moved on to Ramya and Grey River and Franceville, those places. But when you're going wirelessly, there's limits to what you can do and the amount of traffic and stuff that you can put on there. And when we started with the original equipment, the first radio that went up in the tower, they told us that you can put 500 users on there. They said that you can put one radio up in the tower and put 512 customers on there. We quickly realized, as soon as we started hooking people up, that you can get 53 or 54 customers off the radio before the radio in the tower just gives up the ghost and just can't handle all the traffic for all the users. So we were out hooking up customers, and everything was going okie-dory, this guy. And one morning, myself and Clive went out, and we hooked up 55, 56, 57 customers, and nobody's internet worked. Just, it all stopped. And we couldn't figure out what was going on, because in the morning when we left, there was 51 or 52 customers hooked up, and everything was working fine. And when we hooked up 53 and 54 and 55, the systems crashed on us. So what we did was, undid what we did that day, and just turned off the last 4 or 5, and okie-dory, the internet came up best guy. So what we discovered way back in the beginning was we can get 50 customers off a radio before she started causing issues. So we knew that our ceiling was 50. So what we did was looked at the tables and stuff, and we figured out that we can put more radios in the tower and we wouldn't interfere with each other. So then we put up a second radio, and we put on another 50 customers and another 50 customers. And that's basically how we did it. But there was limits to how much traffic you could put on the network and stuff along those lines. So the industry standards estimates 30% penetration into customers' houses. So 30% meaning 600 houses in Burgeo, 30% means 180 customers. And that's at the high end, that you aim for 180 customers in Burgeo. So we put up 4 radios, 50 on each one, gives us 200 radios, 200 customers, and everything should be okie-dory. So we did that, and in the beginning, things were going reasonably well, and so we got Burgeo all set up. Then we went to Ramya and set those guys up, and same premise, 50 customers maximum on the radio, and then we set up Grey River and Franceville and Granbrook. So we had all 5 towns all hooked up, and everything was going reasonably well. But what we found out that the bandwidth that we were buying here in Burgeo very quickly got used up, because people not only use the internet, just regular user, they started using the internet a lot. So we had people that were on the internet 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We had people with internet radio going. We had people downloading movies and songs. So what happened was the people started using the internet more than what we had expected. But we couldn't buy the bandwidth here in Burgeo. So right here in Burgeo, the most we could get was a T1 line, which is 1.5 megs. And that could not service all of our customers. As we were adding more customers on, so we got a bottleneck. So that was our second major problem, that we didn't have enough bandwidth. And we couldn't buy it here in Burgeo. So the big problem we had then was we couldn't buy the bandwidth here in Burgeo. Where is the closest place we could get it? And we could go to Hermitage, or it was easier for us to, we were already in Grand Brit, to go to Rose Blanche. So we got talking to the government and everything and explained to our problems and stuff, and they agreed and they gave us some more money and connected us up with Rose Blanche. And for the same price that we were paying for a 1.5 meg service here in Burgeo, we negotiated and got a 3 meg service in Grand Britain. So now for the same price, except for the capital investment of going to Rose Blanche, that we had the same or double the internet connection in Grand Britain from Rose Blanche. So now we had the capability of fixing our problem and adding more customers. So we started hooking up more customers, continued on hooking up our customers, and everything started going good. And that's when we started getting into the summertime issues. When we went and started taking our internet from Rose Blanche, we had a long link between Rose Blanche and Grand Britain, which is 37 kilometers from tower to tower, and from Burgeo to Grand Britain was 45 kilometers. And what would happen was, in the summertime, at 10 o'clock in the morning, at 11 o'clock, the sun would, the way the Earth's curvature and heat waves would hit, that we would lose our signal. And when the temperature went over 21 degrees until 6 o'clock in the evening, the internet just didn't work. So now we had all these customers hooked up, everything's going along fine until in the summertime, and the internet would just die. And without doing anything on our part, that it would come back again that evening. So that entire summer, I spent running back and forth between Grand Britain and Burgeo, climbing towers, changing the antennas, changing the radios, thinking that it was our equipment. And that's what I was told by the engineers. So we spent the whole summer just running back and forth in the towers, and never fixed the problem. But when September rolled around, the problem disappeared. The problem just completely disappeared. And we said, well, perfect. But what happened was we continued adding our customers and everything's going fine. When the next year rolled around, same thing happened again. So when it happened again, I noticed the temperatures and all that kind of stuff, and I got it back on the phone with the engineers. And the engineers confirmed that they were having the same problem in other areas and that they were working on it. So they gave me some software, and they allowed me to, or worked with me to change some stuff down there, and we were actually a test place. So we started making some changes and stuff like that, and it didn't do anything. Nuts and bolts, it didn't do anything. September came, problem disappeared again. And when the problem disappeared, the engineer said, look, we will have a piece of equipment in place by next March, and it'll fix your problem. Guaranteed. So when March rolled around, they didn't have the piece of equipment, and I knew April and May was getting close, and we had to get stuff up in the towers. And one of the things that the board of directors were concerned about was, we don't have the problem fixed for this summer, we're going to have the same problem again this summer. So what we did was we put money in the budget to replace the link between Burgeo and Grand Britain, either with the new stuff that the manufacturer made or buy some other gear. So we started doing some research and stuff, and we ended up spending over $20,000 on a new link between Burgeo and Grand Britain, because that's where the main problem was last year. To date, that link, ever since it's been up, has been operating at 100%. So over the summertime, when temperatures got hot, that link stayed up. So when March rolled around, that was the main concern, was to fix this problem with heat in the summertime. And if you recall, throughout the summer, the internet didn't go down when it got hot. So that was the goal, to get that fixed. But what happens is, as our network got more stable, people got happier with it, we put on more customers. So when we went back and we negotiated a 5 meg service, so we knew that we were using all of our bandwidth, so we went and upped our bandwidth to a 5 meg service. So in the beginning we had a 1.5, now we're all the way up to 3 times that amount with a 5 meg service. And what I noticed was we were using more and more bandwidth. So as we had more customers on and people were using it more, we were using more and more bandwidth. So we went back to the Alliant again and said, listen, we're using all of our bandwidth. So we knew that when people were having problems with the internet that was slowing down and stuff, we were watching here, and we knew that we were using everything that we were buying. So we were buying a big pipe from Alliant, and it was being used. So we knew that that's what was causing the internet to slow down. So the only solution to that is just to buy more bandwidth. So we went off and purchased more bandwidth. And we've now, for the same price, or a little bit extra, we're paying for a 10 meg service. So as soon as we flipped over to a 10 meg service, that didn't happen until, so we had to upgrade some equipment in Rose Blanche, but that didn't happen until the 24th of October, late October. And as soon as we flipped from a 5 meg service to a 10 meg service, saw the bandwidth usage go up to 7 and 8 megabits. So we knew that there's 2 and 3 megs of service that people weren't getting before, but they're getting now. So if you go out and look on the computer, we will see that on a daily basis, we're up using more than 5 megs that we used to be getting. Now we're using 7 and 8 megs, so that the internet service is being utilized by a fair number of people. So up until the 24th of October, I knew where the problem was. So, but now we're into the area that our 10 meg service is not being fully utilized, and people are still experiencing slow speeds. So this is causing us to scratch our heads, because if you go and look at every single individual component on the network, from Rose Blanche right down to the customer's house, all the pieces of equipment are working exactly right. We were looking at some stats. Since the radio was last reset, that's on the radio between Burgeo and Grand Brit, there were 1.4 billion packets went across that network, and 2 got lost. So you're looking at 2 in 1.4 billion packets, which means it's working exactly like it should. So there's nothing getting lost, everything's going okie-dory. If you look at the next piece of equipment between Burgeo and Grand Brit, the link has been up ever since it's been put there 100% of the time. It has never gone down. So, and then when you look at all the individual pieces of the equipment, they're all working exactly like they should. There's still a problem. But if you take the manufacturers of each of those individual pieces of equipment, and they're all looking at stats, and they're saying, nope, this is working like it should, there's no errors, it's working fine. This is working fine, this is working fine, this is working fine. So when you take all the individual components, they're all working exactly like they should. But as a group, they're not working together. So what's happening is they're not working together as a team. So you can't go back to the manufacturer of this equipment or the manufacturer of that equipment. Everybody's saying, look, mine's working perfectly, I got the stats to prove it. I got the stats to prove it. I got the stats to prove it. So that you can't pin one person down and say, look, there's the problem, and I need you to fix it. Because the equipment is all from different manufacturers, you need someone with a broader focus to look at it and see what's going on. Now, that's tough to do, especially down here in Burgeo, and we're a little bit isolated. And getting someone that has the intelligence to look at all those different pieces of equipment as a whole group and identifying what's going on is hard to do. But what we've done is, in the last 2 weeks, that we've contracted a Alliant to actually monitor our network and look at and see what's going on. So what they're doing is taking individual pieces and looking at step by step and seeing what's happening. And when I sit in the tower in Burgeo, and I'm beyond all the internet users, and I'm on the main core of our network, I can get on the internet, and it doesn't matter what hour of day or hour of night, my internet is really fast. So I know and feel very confident that the problem is not between Burgeo and Rose Blanche. So that's not where the problem lies. I think it's from the tower out to the customers' houses. So that's where Alliant has been focusing and trying to do some tests and see what's going on. And one of the big issues that we have is in the tower here in Burgeo, like before we had 4 radios in the tower talking to 50 customers. People wanted more bandwidth, so what we did was we put up, and I talked about it earlier in the spring, we were going to put more radios in the tower. So what we have is 9 radios in the tower now, as opposed to the original 4. And the bandwidth is turned up a little bit so that the radios are actually faster, so you get a faster speed, in theory. But the problem is, we can't put a 10th radio up. But what happens is, with those 9 radios all talking to each other, to individual houses and stuff, that if you put up the 10th radio, it starts interfering with 2 radios in the tower. So what happens is, if you put up 1 more radio, you're going to kill the radio you're using plus 2 more. So 3 of those radios are going to stop working because they're interfering with each other. So we're limited in the wireless world by 9 radios. So what's happening now is there's 9 radios in the tower, and they all have between 30 and 35 customers on them. So what happens is, when you sit on your computer, your radio goes up, the radio device that's in your house talks to the radio that's up in the tower, and that radio in the tower is talking to 30 other customers, approximately. So where I think the problem, and where the original, the diagnostics that we're seeing right now, and what we're seeing is the radio that's in the tower, I guess the easiest way I can make an analogy to this, like if you're having a meeting and there's one person standing up and everybody needs to talk to that one person that's up at the front of the group. If you have 3 or 4 loud people in the room talking to the guy that's in doing the meeting, then the other, he spends all his time talking to those 4 loud people, and he kind of ignores the other 26 people that are sitting in the room, so they're not getting their fair share. So that's what we're seeing in the tower. So like there's one radio in there for a 2-hour period dominated 96% of the conversation. So we know that particular user is using up all the bandwidth, and the other 29 customers is not getting their fair share. So what we've got to do is find some way of allowing that person to use his internet and do whatever, but not dominate, so that the other 27 or 28 people don't get in the internet. So that's where we're looking at putting a solution in that will still allow him on, or if he's actually causing the internet to go down for everybody else, just shut him off and let him know that, listen, you've got something wrong with your computer, or you're doing something wrong that's dominating the network. But that's got to be done on all 9 radios. You can't do it. So whether the person is got a virus on the computer or downloading movies, or if he's just a legitimate internet user, he's still dominating the network. So you got to put something in there that allows everything to work so that one person doesn't dominate and take over that particular radio. So what I'm seeing is some customers are meeting me on the street and saying, Dave, my internet's the best kind. I don't know what everybody's upset about. That my internet's perfect, I haven't had a problem with it. And the thing is, he happens to be on a radio that is not being dominated by any person, or when he's on there, that the person that dominates the network is not on. So that's, sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow. It just for argument's sake, if it's your computer that's causing the issue, you're working today, you're home, your computer's not turned on, and it's not causing any issues. This evening after supper, you might turn your computer on, it might cause the problem. So we've got to figure out a way to stop that from happening, but still allowing everything to work. And it's not an easy thing to do. And because your computer's not on, everybody's computer's not on all the time, that I might be looking at it this afternoon from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and if you don't have your computer on, I'm not going to see the problem. So I've got to do it over a longer period of time, which gives me a better chance that you've got your radio on or everybody's got their computers on, so that we can get a full picture of what's happening, that we can change it. And this is why it's taking so long to get the solution put in place. The engineers are looking at it, and they're coming back and saying, yeah, we got a good idea, but they're not coming forward and saying, this is what you got to do to fix it, because being engineers, they want to be absolutely sure that this is what's causing the problem, and they'll give it to me in writing and give the solution. So it's taken a little while from that side. But prior to October 24th, we knew exactly where the problem was. We didn't have enough bandwidth. Now we have the bandwidth. There's a different problem. So we're focusing our attention on a different issue, right? So that's it in a nutshell on what we're doing to try to figure out what the problem is. When they come back with the solution, I don't know if it's going to cost $100 to fix or if it's going to cost $10,000. And I really don't know. The only thing that I can ask the customers to do is to make sure that, and I've said it many times, make sure that you got an up-to-date functioning antivirus software that prevents your computer from having a virus, spyware, and adware. Make sure that you run those 3 programs on your computer to make sure your system is clean and you're not the one that's causing the issue. The other thing that I want to bring up is I came in here some time ago with the radios, and I identified that we were having some problems with the radios in people's houses, but the number of lights that's on them and stuff along those lines. This summer alone, we have replaced 50 of those radios. So out of all the customers that's out there, we've replaced 50 of them. So people were, even if our internet was perfectly working spotless, people would not be able to get on the internet because the radio was gone. So it's a very important thing. If you can't get on the internet, one of the first things you should be checking is those lights on the radio. And there's 2 different radios out there. One got 6 lights, power, wireless link light, and the low light has to be solid. If that low light's not solid and the lights are not staying on, then there's a problem with that radio, and your internet will not work fine. You have to take it out and give me a call, and we'll replace the radio. That's all there's to it. So that's the first step. If you can't get on the internet, check those lights. That's an automatic. And then if you phone, first thing that I normally ask is, did you check the lights on the radio, right? So if those lights are not on, you're not getting on the internet, period. So if those lights are on, then we have to look into other issues. But the first thing I ask any customer is check those lights. And the other radio's got 4 lights. It's got power, low, medium, high. So you got to have at least a low light on, solid, continuously, all the time. So, but anyway, that's where we're headed with the internet, to try to figure out where the problem is. But the one thing that I have to acknowledge and say is that all the way through this entire process, it has been me doing the work, but the board has been having all of its faith and trust in me that any time that I've gone to the board of directors and said, listen, this needs to be done, I need to spend this much money, there's never been that's too much, or no, we can't afford it, or it's go get it, we can't afford not to. So that every time that I've gone to the board, and I realize the financial situation the board's in and stuff along those lines, that they've always said, yes, go ahead and do it. And there's never been a limit on that side of it. It's we need to get the problem fixed. So the board has had full confidence in me and working towards a solution and stuff. But we've gone to the end of where I know how to fix the problem, and we're bringing in outside people to have a look at what's going on there. So, and other than that, I don't know what else to say.
And I just might add to that, because I know it's very, very frustrating for the internet users. I mean, they're trying to get on there, and they got a piece of equipment there that they're trying to get on and use, of course, and rightly so. And they're paying their $34 and something a month for the internet, and they should get satisfaction. And I really sympathize with that, because I would be the same as they are. I would be very, very upset, and would want this problem corrected as soon as possible. I'd just like to add that as board of directors, just because we're not paid to do this job, just because we don't get anything in return for it, this job is not being overlooked. I mean, we've done everything in our power, as far as I understand it, to correct this problem. Like I said, we put all the confidence in Dave to solve it, and I think from my limited knowledge of it that I have of it is that this is not an easy problem to solve. Now, it might be if you had a lot of money, you could throw at it. $500,000 you could throw at it. Probably you could bring in the biggest kind of equipment that that could throw these signals wherever you want to and handle whatever number of customers. That might be a possibility. If that's a possibility, then we can't do it. We don't have that kind of money. So we're restricted on our budget, for one thing, and yet we have major problems. Like I said before, if this was an easy thing to do, I'm sure all the other companies that are given internet would have been in here. There's no doubt about it. Now, it might be a moot point, because next year, I understand, in 2007, we're going to have the fiber optic brought ashore here in Burgeville. I was to the meeting the other night there, where Persona and Rogers is going to bring the fiber optic down the coast there. And that might be a blessing right there. And if they might come in and just offer the internet and offer TV in the Burgeville, and if they can do that, and everybody wants to go with them, well, that's fine. Then this company will just fold up, and like I said, the assets will become become the property of some organizations beneficial to our town here. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is that we could cut a deal with Persona or Rogers, whoever decides that they're going to offer something, and we could put the internet on the fiber optics that is coming here to Virgil, and then put it throughout the people's houses on the cable system. You know, so there could be, it could be a number of scenarios that'll take place after they put the fiber optic here in Virgil. Now, what it will be, I don't know, but we'll certainly be talking to them, and if we can partner with them, or if they want to put their own in, well, that's fine. There's no problem with none of it. To tell you the truth, I mean, all I would like to see here, like I did back in 1981, when we started this company, I wanted to see good television. Well, now some people will say, well, I don't really want the television you got here in Virgil. I'll put my own satellite dish up. Well, the capabilities are there now. I mean, some people are buying their dishes and got their own receivers. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's perfect. If you had that ability back in 1981, this company would never have started. This would never have been here. And it served a purpose at that time, and I think it's serving a purpose now with the internet. We are much faster than dial-up. We should never call it high speed. We should just simply say it was wireless, because the high speed leaves a lot to be desired. But we are trying to solve the problem, and probably that's what I would want to leave with the people, that we're trying to solve the problem. And I know that doesn't take away the frustration of when you're trying to get on that computer, without a doubt. So the problem might be solved within a year or so. Like I say, either be solved by us sooner than that, if we can find a solution. Like Dave said, we went to St. John's, talked to the engineers there in Alliant, and they're doing up a schematic now of our internet there, and trying to suggest solutions for Dave to try. That's one way. The other way, of course, is that if that doesn't work, we can probably bring in the people that owns the equipment and ask them, now, here's your equipment. We think it's working. What is wrong with the problem? There's a number of things that we can do between now and by the time they bring the fiber optic to shore. If we don't get it solved, when the fiber optic comes ashore in Virgil, when that's probably the solution will probably be right there. Now that's going to take some time too, because my understanding is it's not going to come ashore till July or August in 2007. So, but once it does, this company will do what it can do to give the internet, satisfactory internet, like it's done with the TV. I think the TV that we have here in Virgil is second to none on this island, or just about anywhere else you want to go, particularly for the price that you're paying, which is a little over $21. Can't be bought anywhere for it. You can go anywhere you want to go for it. So I think that part of the mandate of BBS that we fulfilled. We have given good television for a fairly cheap price. The radio system, that was another part of our mandate, was to give a good radio system. We have not been able to do this at this point. We've given a mediocre radio system. Not that we haven't been working on it, because we have been working on it, but to get a good radio system to put up in that tower so we can get it throughout wireless, throughout the Old Virgil. The radio that's on television is very, very good. It's on the cable. But we wanted to put it over the hair so people could get it in their cars and that, Now that radio signal has not been anywhere near perfect. Not one. We can solve it, but again, it costs a lot of money. I think they're talking about we want to get 1 hamp. You're looking at anywhere between $50,000 to $80,000 for a hamp to put on for a radio. People might say, well, it's only simple. Go and buy this little thing, put it in. It's just not that simple. We've had VOCM look at it. We've had CBC look at it. We've had all the connections that Clyde can get over to in regards to radio. We just paid last year that we paid a guy $40,000 to build a amp for our radio system. I think it worked 2 or 3 days. Gave out, sent it back, brought it back, worked another day or so, gave out. Then now he's going to send back our money because you just can't build a system to make it good enough. But like I say, if we had a lot of money, we could just go there and say, look, give us that $100,000 amp there, and we'll take it and put it up in the tower and make it work. So we're limited by the amount of money that we have for sure in relation to some of this. But we will continue to work at it. There's no doubt about that. We will continue to work, and I apologize to particularly to the internet customers that there is so much problem. When we thought a number of times that we would have, we would get out of this a little faster than we have. But certainly been a growing problem, and it's still growing.
Do you have anything else you would like to add?
Nope.
Okay,
You
well,
got any questions?
no, I think most of it is explained to my satisfaction. I hope the rest of the listening audience understands what is being said. I'd like to thank you for coming in and explaining those things to us.
You're welcome.
Like that.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. This concludes our program for tonight. Thank you for watching. Good night.